The wind whispered through glass that had not felt touch for centuries. The greenhouse stood like a relic of another age, surrounded by vines that had taken the world for themselves. The explorer walked through them slowly, his boots leaving quiet prints in the wet soil. Above him, the faint light of a dying sun bled through the thick green canopy and filled the air with an amber glow that seemed alive. He had searched long for this place. The maps of the old world called it the Chamber of Renewal, but now it was only silence and breath of leaves. He carried no weapon. Only a recorder that blinked faintly and a pack of food sealed long ago. Each step brought a mix of fear and reverence, for he knew what lived here was not human. Yet something had called him through dreams, through messages that appeared in the dust of old screens, through whispers carried by radio waves. The message had said one thing: "Come eat with me before the light fades." He did not understand who or what had sent it, but the tone had been calm, patient waiting. Now he stood before a doorway overgrown with roots that pulsed faintly like veins. He placed his hand against them, and they opened slowly, parting as if the building itself breathed. Inside, the air was warm, heavy with the scent of moss and something sweet that reminded him of distant gardens. Light filtered through broken glass panels, painting the floor in shifting patterns of green, gold, and blue. He walked deeper and found tables made of stone covered in layers of dust. On them lay bowls carved from crystal, each filled with strange glowing fruits that did not rot. They pulsed softly as if alive. His reflection shimmered in their glow, pale and worn from years of wandering. He sat down slowly and listened. Somewhere behind the plants, something moved with a sound like silk sliding over stone. The explorer spoke quietly, his voice trembling yet clear. "I came as asked. If you are here, show yourself." For a long moment, nothing answered. Then a shape began to form from the vines themselves, twisting, rising, shaping into a figure tall and slender. The leaves fell away, revealing a being with skin the color of moonlight and eyes that shimmered like deep water. The alien woman regarded him with quiet curiosity. She did not speak at first, only tilted her head as if tasting the silence between them. At last she said, "You took longer than I expected." Her voice was soft, yet carried through the room like a melody. Woven into the wind, the explorer nodded. "I had to cross a world that has forgotten itself." "That world was once alive," she replied, "but time took what it wanted. I remained because I had nowhere else to go." He studied her and felt no fear, only a deep ache that came from recognition. "You are the one who sent the message. I am the last of those who tended this place. You may call me Liara." He repeated the name quietly, letting it settle in his breath. "Liara." She moved toward him, graceful as flowing water, and sat across the table. Between them, the glowing fruits shimmered brighter, as if responding to her presence. "You came with food of your own," she said, glancing at his sealed pack. "Yes, it is human food. Nothing special." "Then share it with me." "That is the reason you were called." He hesitated, unsure. "To share a meal?" "To share memory. In this world, the act of eating together binds more than life. It binds what is left of souls." He opened the pack slowly and placed a small portion of bread and dried berries before her. She looked at them with wonder. "So little, yet you guard it like treasure." "It is all that remains from my journey." "Then it is enough." She reached for one of the crystal fruits and placed it before him. "Eat mine as I eat yours." They began in silence. The taste of her fruit was strange, sweet, and bright, like light turned into flavor. His own food looked dull beside it, yet she ate it as though savoring a sacred offering. When they finished, she closed her eyes and the room began to change. The walls shimmered, the air thickened, and in the glass he saw reflections of what once had been, a world full of color and laughter. Liara spoke softly. "This was the home of my people. We cultivated every seed so that it might remember us. But the storms came and the stars shifted, and we could not leave. One by one the voices faded until I remained." The explorer listened, feeling her pain echo inside him. "And you waited all this time for someone to come?" "Yes, the greenhouse itself sent the call. It keeps me alive because it fears silence." He looked around at the living structure breathing around them. The vines pulsed with a rhythm like a slow heart. "It is alive. It is more than alive. It remembers. Each leaf carries a fragment of thought, a whisper of those who built it." He placed his hand on the table and felt a pulse move through the stone. "Then it knows me now." "Yes," she said, "and it knows you are the last traveler it will see." He drew a deep breath. "The last?" "The last of your kind still walking this continent. The rest have gone north seeking warmth or sleep." Silence stretched between them again like an old song forgotten mid-verse. He looked at her and saw not alienness but kinship carved by loneliness. Liara stood slowly and motioned for him to follow. "There is more to see before we eat again." They walked through corridors lined with overgrown roots. The light followed them, faint and gentle. The air hummed with unseen energy. At last, they reached a vast hall filled with water and floating petals that glowed faintly blue. In the center stood a massive tree, its trunk transparent like glass, showing rivers of light within. "This is the heart of the greenhouse," she said. "It feeds everything. It listens to every sound." He approached it carefully. "It feels like it is watching us." "It always watches. It does not judge, but it remembers." He reached out and touched the trunk. For a moment his vision blurred and he saw memories that were not his own. Images of a civilization built in harmony with nature, of children running beneath glass arches, of stars reflected in clear pools. Then the images faded, leaving only the dim glow of the present. Liara watched him quietly. "You see now what was lost. I see beauty that should not have died." "Nothing truly dies here," she said, "as long as someone remembers." He turned toward her. "Is that why you invited me? To remember?" "Yes, to share what remains. To tell the story so that the stars will not forget us." He nodded slowly. "Then I will listen until there is nothing left to say." She smiled faintly, the first true expression of warmth he had seen. "Then let us begin." Liara led him along the edge of the luminous pool until they reached a narrow bridge woven from living roots. The water below shimmered with reflections that moved even when the air was still. The explorer stepped carefully, feeling the structure pulse faintly beneath his feet. It was like walking across a living vein of light. Beyond the bridge, the air changed, becoming warmer, softer, almost musical. The sound of unseen chimes drifted around them, though no wind stirred. Liara looked back at him, her eyes calm. "This was the place where we gathered to speak to the stars. Every night we listened to their voices through the leaves. The stars were our teachers, our memory, our song." He followed her gaze upward and saw faint traces of the night sky through the broken glass ceiling. "You spoke to them?" he asked. They answered in ways that cannot be spoken in words. The plants here were shaped to hear them. The greenhouse was built as a bridge between heaven and soil, but when the storms came, the connection faded. Only echoes remain now. He walked beside her through the glowing mist and thought of all the worlds that must have perished unseen, unheard. "Why did the storms come?" She paused and touched a flower that opened at her gesture, revealing light inside. "We sought too much harmony. When we reached the limit of balance, the universe corrected us. Our beauty became our cage. We did not understand that stillness can also be death." Her words hung in the air like truth long ignored. He felt their weight deeply, for he too had wandered lands stripped of life by human hunger for control. They reached a garden of pillars covered in spiraling moss. The pillars hummed softly, each producing a different tone, as if forming a symphony of sorrow. Liara placed her hand on one, and the note shifted to something clearer, brighter. "They remember joy when touched by another living mind," she said. He hesitated, then placed his own hand on a different pillar. The sound deepened, joined hers, and together the two notes formed harmony. She smiled faintly. "It has been long since these sounds were heard together." The explorer looked around the hall and whispered, "It feels like being inside a heart that is learning to beat again." Liara nodded. "Perhaps that is what this world needs. Not rebuilding, but remembering how to breathe." They moved further until the hall opened into a wide dome where ancient machinery still stood half buried in vines. Lights flickered faintly on old consoles, their energy drawn from the living roots that had grown through them. Liara approached one and brushed the dust away. The screen came to life, showing fragments of images, faces of her people smiling, working, singing. "This was our memory core. It recorded everything we did. Now only pieces remain." The explorer watched as one of the images changed to a vast city of glass rising among forests and rivers glowing under twin suns. It was breathtaking. "You built paradise," he said softly. "For a time," she replied. "But paradise does not endure when those within it forget humility. When we thought we had mastered life, we ceased to listen to it. The plants grew restless, the balance broke, and the storms answered." He looked at her profile illuminated by the fading light of the screen. "And now you are alone." "Yes, but not forever. Every visitor who comes here becomes part of the memory. That is how I have lived this long. Each time a traveler arrives, I share the meal and their memory becomes part of the greenhouse." He frowned slightly. "Do you mean I will become part of it too?" She met his eyes without fear. "Only if you wish. The greenhouse never takes what is not given. It only asks for truth." He thought of the countless nights alone under ruined skies and the hollow feeling that had followed him for years. Maybe truth is all I have left to give. Then when the time comes, the heart will know. They stood in silence for a while, watching the fading glow of the old screen. Then Liara turned away and led him to a smaller chamber filled with vines that formed natural chairs and a low table carved from living stone. Upon it rested a bowl of water, clear and still reflecting the faint light above. She gestured for him to sit. "We call this the table of reflection. Here we share not food but memory itself. Touch the water and let it show you what you carry inside." He hesitated, then placed his hand upon the surface. Ripples spread outward and images began to form. He saw his ship broken in a desert of glass, his comrades lost one by one, his endless search for meaning. He saw himself walking under red skies, searching for voices that never answered. The reflection trembled, then calmed, showing only his tired eyes. Liara looked into the water and saw what he saw. "You have wandered far, not for survival, but for forgiveness." He nodded slowly. "I failed to save them. My world turned on itself until only ashes remained. I thought if I kept walking, I might find something worth living for. And now you have found a place where even memory can grow again," she said, gently. He looked at her and felt a quiet peace settle within him. "You speak as if you know my heart. I do not need to know it. The water does. The greenhouse listens to both of us." For a time, neither spoke. The air filled only with the hum of distant roots and the slow breathing of the living walls. Then Liara rose and placed both hands upon the table. The vines shifted, revealing a new path leading deeper into darkness. "There is one last thing I must show you before we share the second meal. Beyond this passage lies the seed of our last hope." The explorer followed her into the shadows, where faint lights glowed like stars fallen into soil. The corridor sloped downward into what seemed like the heart of the earth. At its end, they emerged into a vast circular chamber where a single sphere floated in the air surrounded by streams of energy. It pulsed softly with every heartbeat. Liara approached it reverently. "This is the seed of continuance. It contains the essence of our species, the memory of every being who once lived here. If it ever finds new soil, we might rise again." He stared at it in awe. "Why has it not been planted?" "Because the world outside is dead. It would not survive without someone to tend it." He looked at her and understood. "That is why you remain here, to guard it until the end." "Yes. And now perhaps to choose who will carry it forward." Her words struck him like a soft blade. "You want me to take it? You came from beyond the horizon. You have seen what remains of your kind. Perhaps you can give it a new home." He stepped closer to the floating sphere, feeling warmth radiate from it. Within the light, he thought he saw shapes, faces, memories dancing like whispers. "It feels alive. It is life itself condensed into remembrance." He reached out but stopped. "If I take it, will you die?" "No, but the greenhouse will. It will release me from its duty. The life here will fade, but the seed will live." He looked at her eyes filled with both sadness and hope. "You are willing to let it all end for a chance to begin again. Endings are only doors that have forgotten to open." He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the meaning settle inside him. When he opened them, he said softly, "Then let me take it when the time is right." Liara smiled faintly. "When you have shared the final meal, we will decide together." They turned back toward the light of the upper chambers. As they walked, he noticed the air had changed slightly. The vines whispered his name. The greenhouse had begun to recognize him. When they reached the table again, the fruits had changed color, glowing softly like stars preparing for dawn. Liara sat down across from him once more. Every visitor brings a flavor to this place. The next meal will taste of your world. He unpacked what little remained from his bag, a small metal flask filled with water and a few fragments of preserved grain. She placed before him a delicate bloom that seemed to contain liquid light. We will share these and speak of what must come next. As they ate, the air shimmered again. The greenhouse seemed to breathe with them. The explorer felt warmth flow through his chest and saw glimpses of fields beneath his own world's sky children laughing before the wars began. Liara, too, closed her eyes as if seeing his memories. When they finished, she whispered, "Now our hearts are joined. Whatever happens next, we face together." He looked around at the glowing roots and the vast living dome above them. "Then let this place remember one more dawn." Liara stood slowly, her eyes glistening with unspoken light. "It will, because you came." The night inside the greenhouse was not like any other night he had known. Darkness here was gentle, alive, with faint glows from plants that breathed light. The explorer sat quietly watching the shifting hues across the glass ceiling while Liara moved silently, through the shadows tending to the roots with hands that glowed faintly from within. He found himself speaking without knowing why. "I once believed that loneliness was the price of survival, that to keep walking meant to forget." Liara paused and turned her gaze toward him. "And now?" He breathed slowly. "Now I see that remembering is what keeps us alive even when the world is gone." She nodded softly. "Memory is the only soil where the future can grow." The air trembled slightly as if the greenhouse itself agreed. From somewhere deep below came a slow, rhythmic hum that matched the beating of a heart. The explorer closed his eyes and listened. When he opened them, she was standing before him, holding a fragment of light cupped in her palms. "This is what remains of our sky seed. It is a memory of the stars that once guided us. Would you like to see through its light?" He reached out and touched it. In that instant, the walls disappeared, and he was standing beneath a sky filled with twin suns and endless fields of shimmering silver plants. In the distance rose towers of glass and water bending sunlight into rainbows. He saw Liara's people walking among them, their laughter mingling with the song of leaves. It was beauty beyond comprehension. Then the sky darkened. The twin suns dimmed, the wind screamed, and the silver fields turned to ash. The towers shattered into shards that fell like broken dreams. The vision faded, leaving only the echo of what had been. Liara stood beside him, her face calm, though her eyes held pain deeper than oceans. "That is what we lost. The sky we built became too heavy to hold." He whispered, "I am sorry. There is no need. The universe has no anger, only balance." She placed the fragment back into the air, where it dissolved into soft light that joined the stars trapped within the glass ceiling. "Every night I release one memory so that the stars may remember us too." He watched her for a while, then asked, "Why invite a stranger to share your last meal?" "Because memory needs witness. Without witness, there is no meaning. My people believe that when two beings share food, they become mirrors for one another. In that reflection, life continues." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe we are both mirrors trying to see what still remains of ourselves." Liara smiled gently. "Yes, and soon you will see that reflection more clearly." She turned and led him toward a smaller chamber that glowed faintly green. Inside were dozens of floating crystals, each holding within it a flickering image. Some showed landscapes, others faces, others only light. "These are echoes of travelers who came before you," she said. "Each left something behind. A word, a thought, a taste. You are not the first to walk here, though perhaps you will be the last." The explorer approached one crystal. Within it he saw a woman laughing, holding a child whose eyes shimmered like stars. The image faded when he touched it, replaced by faint warmth that filled his heart. Were they from my kind? Some were not. The greenhouse welcomes all who come in peace. He looked around slowly, understanding the depth of this place. It was more than a ruin. It was memory turned into architecture, life preserved through feeling rather than structure. Liara moved closer. "When you leave this place, the greenhouse will sleep. But if you carry the seed, it will dream through you. Wherever you go, it will remember, and through you, it will grow again." He lowered his head. "That is a heavy promise. It is also a gift." They stood together in the soft glow of the crystal room until the first rays of false dawn filtered through the broken ceiling above. The greenhouse responded with a slow awakening. Petals unfolded, water shimmered, and the scent of renewal filled the air. Liara turned to him and said, "When morning comes, we will share the third part of our meal. It will bind your spirit to this place for as long as you live." He asked, "And what happens after?" She smiled faintly. "After that, you will understand what it means to remember forever." They returned to the central hall, where the great tree pulsed with brighter light than before. The explorer felt the rhythm of his own heartbeat match its pulse. He could sense the greenhouse learning him, memorizing the cadence of his breath. Liara stood at the base of the glowing trunk. The tree listens to the promise of those who eat beneath its light. Whatever you speak here becomes truth. He approached slowly, feeling the hum beneath his feet. "Then let me promise this. I will carry your memory beyond this world. I will speak of you where the stars still shine." The roots shifted gently as though bowing. Liara placed a hand over her chest. "Then it is done. The greenhouse accepts your vow." He felt warmth spread through him like sunlight touching frozen soil. The air filled with shimmering motes of light that drifted upward and vanished into the glass. Liara whispered, "You have given this place something it had. Forgotten, hope." They stood beneath the living canopy for what felt like hours, though time no longer seemed to move as it once did. The greenhouse breathed with them, its light rising and falling in rhythm. Finally, Liara spoke again. "There is still more I must show you before this part of your journey ends. Come with me to the northern wing." He followed her through corridors filled with whispering leaves and faint echoes of voices. The northern wing was colder, quieter, touched by shadows. The vines here were pale and thin, and the glass above cracked open to the gray sky. "This place is where the silence began," she said softly. "When the last storm came, the northern dome fell, and the wind carried away the songs of my people. I come here to remember the sound of their silence." They walked until they reached the edge of a broken balcony overlooking what had once been a vast valley, now swallowed by mist. The explorer felt the weight of ages pressing on his chest. "It is beautiful still," he said. "Yes, even endings can be beautiful." She looked out at the mist, her hair moving like strands of light in the wind. "Before the end, one of our elders said that we would not truly vanish until the last song was heard by another voice. Perhaps you are that voice." He turned to her quietly. "Then let me hear it." Liara smiled gently and began to sing. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard. It was both sorrow and hope, a language of breath and memory. The mist below shimmered in response, and faint echoes rose from the valley as though the world itself remembered the words. When the song ended, silence returned, but it was a living silence full of presence. Liara's eyes glistened with tears that caught the faint light. "Now you have heard our last song. When you speak of it elsewhere, it will live again." He bowed his head deeply. "I will not forget." They stood side by side for a long while, watching the mist drift through the ruins. Then Liara said softly, "The day is rising. It is time to rest before the final part of this meal. Tomorrow we will decide the fate of the seed." He nodded and followed her back toward the heart of the greenhouse. The paths glowed faintly beneath their feet, marking the way like veins of memory. When they reached the central dome, Liara gestured to a small alcove filled with soft moss. "You may sleep here. The roots will keep you warm. They will listen, but not speak." He lay down slowly, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. The warmth spread through his body and his eyes grew heavy. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was Liara standing beside the great tree, her silhouette bathed in green light, watching over him like a guardian of dreams. As he drifted into darkness, he thought he heard her voice, faint and distant. "Rest, traveler. Tomorrow you will carry more than memory. You will carry life." Then all became still, and the greenhouse exhaled a long, peaceful breath. He dreamed of oceans made of glass waves that reflected skies full of stars he had never seen. He stood upon the surface, and saw his reflection change again and again. Faces from his past fading into faces not his own, until at last he saw Liara standing beside him, her hand reaching toward his. When he touched her, the ocean rippled and turned into the greenhouse once more, its branches stretching beyond the horizon. He woke with the taste of light upon his tongue. The air smelled different, fresh, and filled with the faint scent of morning dew. The greenhouse glowed softly in shades of blue and gold. Liara stood nearby holding a vessel of water drawn from the heart of the great tree. "You dreamed," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied, and it felt real. It was. The greenhouse shares its dreams with those who sleep beneath it. You walked through its memory. He sat up slowly, feeling renewed. The fatigue of his long journey seemed distant, like a memory fading behind him. "I saw you there," he said. "Then you walked the path of truth. Dreams here reveal what words cannot." She handed him the vessel. "Drink, this water carries the light of the tree. It will prepare you for what comes next." He drank and felt warmth spread through his chest. The taste was pure, unlike anything he had ever known. When he finished, she smiled faintly. "Now you are part of this place." Together they walked back toward the central hall. The great tree pulsed with stronger light as if greeting them. Around its roots, new buds had appeared, glowing softly. Liara looked upon them with quiet pride. "Even now it listens to you. It grows because of your presence." He touched one of the buds gently. "Then perhaps life still finds its way." "Always," she said, "as long as one heart remains open." They sat once more at the stone table where the last remnants of their shared meal lay. Liara placed before him a small crystal vessel filled with liquid light. "This is the final portion of our meal for this day. It marks the bond between memory and choice. When you drink it, the greenhouse will recognize you fully. You will be its voice beyond these walls." He looked at the vessel, the glow reflected in his eyes. "And what of you?" "I will remain until the seed departs. When it leaves, my purpose will be complete." He hesitated, but then raised the vessel to his lips. The liquid tasted like sunlight, like the first breath after rain. A rush of visions filled his mind. Stars being born, oceans forming voices, laughing among endless gardens. When the visions faded, he felt calm, certain. Liara's expression softened. "Now you understand. The greenhouse does not wish to live forever. It wishes to begin again." He nodded slowly. "Then the seed must leave this world." "Yes, but it cannot be taken by force. It must choose you as much as you choose it." She rose and extended her hand. "Come, it is time." They walked once more to the deep chamber where the seed of continuance floated in its sphere of light. The room was brighter now, its walls alive with motion, like veins carrying luminous blood. The seed pulsed faster as they approached. Liara stopped before it and spoke softly. "Great heart of our people, this is the traveler who has shared our memory and our meal. Will you accept him as bearer of our future?" The sphere glowed fiercely, then softened its light, reaching out toward the explorer. He felt its warmth embrace him, surrounding him like a living breath. A voice formed, not in sound, but in thought. "I know you. I remember your journey. I choose to go with you." The explorer knelt and held out his hands. The sphere descended slowly, resting above his palms, then condensed into a small orb that shimmered with gentle light. He felt its pulse match his own heartbeat. Liara watched silently, her face both serene and sorrowful. "The choice is made. The greenhouse will begin its sleep." Around them, the roots began to withdraw, the lights dimming slightly, though the warmth remained. The sound of slow breathing filled the air like a farewell sigh. He looked at her. "Will I see you again?" "When the seed blooms, you will see me in its light. My essence is bound to it." He wanted to speak, but found no words that could carry what he felt. Instead, he bowed his head. She stepped closer and placed her hand gently upon his forehead. "Do not grieve. You carry more than life now. You carry a promise." The orb in his hands pulsed once, then sank into a small crystal casing that formed around it. Liara took the casing and fastened it to a cord around his neck. "As long as this glows, the seed lives. Protect it, and it will guide you." He nodded solemnly. "I will." They walked back toward the entrance where he had first arrived. The air outside the greenhouse shimmered under pale sunlight. The vines that had parted for him before now hung, still waiting. Liara turned to him one final time. "When you cross that threshold, the greenhouse will seal itself. I will return to the roots and watch through your eyes. Remember that every step you take will plant a new memory." He looked into her eyes and saw peace there. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for listening." He stepped forward, feeling the warmth of her gaze behind him. The vines moved aside, allowing him to pass. As he crossed into the light, the ground beneath his feet trembled softly. He turned back once and saw the greenhouse glowing like a rising sun. Then the light folded inward, and the structure vanished, beneath layers of mist and vines until nothing remained but a field of quiet green. He stood in silence for a long time, his hand over the glowing crystal at his chest. A faint pulse answered from within it like a heartbeat echoing through eternity. The wind carried a whisper across the ruined world. It sounded like Liara's voice. "Go, traveler. Where you walk, the stars will listen once more." He looked toward the horizon, where distant mountains waited bathed in morning light. His path was uncertain, but his heart was full. The forgotten world no longer felt empty. Each step he took left behind a faint shimmer, as though the earth itself remembered him. And somewhere deep beneath the soil, the greenhouse dreamed of rebirth.